Insurance fraud in the UK is reaching epidemic levels, and it's costing us billions of pounds a year. Deliberate crashes, bogus personal injury claims, even fake deaths. The fraudsters are risking more and more to make a quick killing. And every year, it's adding up to £50 to your insurance bill. Insurers are fighting back, armed with covert surveillance systems.
The CCTV cameras are the best tool we've got in our fight against fraud.
Sophisticated data analysis techniques.
This is connected to a bank account and a second mobile phone number.
And a newly formed dedicated police unit.
Police, get back!
They're catching the criminals red-handed. All those con men, scammers, cheats on the fiddle, now they're caught in the act, and claimed and shamed. Today, the Insurance Fraud Enforcement Department is raiding 2 houses in a hunt for suspects.
Police! Police!
A suspicious incident on a roundabout illustrates that the roads are far from safe.
Now, we believe that was an induced crash and the 2 other cars were acting in collusion with each other.
And one claimer appears to have made a surprising recovery, if these pictures are anything to go by. Insurers are increasingly using surveillance to combat insurance fraud, which makes even the most meticulous of deceptions unlikely to succeed, as this next case shows. A serious motorway collision resulted in a victim's vehicle being forced against a central reservation. Due to the extent of his injuries, the victim subsequently submitted a claim for compensation. Jeff Owen is a consultant with national law firm Greenwoods, which has a specialist anti-fraud group that worked on the case.
He had sustained injuries to his neck, his shoulder and his arms, as a result of which he had loss of sensation in both of his arms. And this meant, he said, that he couldn't drive because, as well as the physical injury, he also had a psychological aversion to travel.
The claimant said that all these factors meant he was unable to return to his job.
When you have a claim which involves an inability to work or to travel, it begins to escalate. And this claim reached the heady numbers of £500,000. Obviously that's a claim which the insurers take very seriously indeed.
As part of the claims process, he went for medical examinations to assess the extent of his injuries and the length of recovery.
Early on, the doctors were suggesting that he should be able to return to work within about 2 years. He also went for psychiatric assessment, and the doctor there thought that from a psychiatric point of view, he was probably fit to return to work after about 6 months. So it was very surprising when he hadn't returned to work quite quickly after the accident.
The growing claim and the fact that he hadn't returned to his job led them to investigate further.
There were suspicions raised at an early stage that the type of claim which was arising was out of proportion to the injury that had been sustained.
This gave the insurer serious misgivings, so they decided to put the claimant under surveillance and brought in a team of specialist investigators. The man who led the project has to remain anonymous so that he could continue to work in the field. The first challenge was to track down the claimant.
We were given 3 different addresses. He moved around quite a bit. He was quite evasive initially, and he lived in high-rise blocks of flats. So that is straight away a difficulty because you have to ID the claimant first.
But they were eventually able to pinpoint where he lived and started surveillance on the main door to the block of flats, the only way in or out, or so they thought.
We had placed him under a fair few periods of surveillance, but he didn't come out at any time, which we thought was rather strange.
The surveillance continued, and eventually they made a breakthrough.
It transpired that the claimant was first sighted when he came out of a back ground floor lounge door, which led out onto an enclosed patio, and then he scaled a 4.5-foot wrought iron railing fence. That was his mode of access every time he left the property and went back into the property. I mean, you try and take a fairly impartial view when you get on plot, but when somebody jumps over a railing, comes out of it was a very unusual thing to do.
Not only was he displaying athletic abilities that were inconsistent with the level of injury he was claiming for, but his behaviour also implied that he suspected he was being observed. The undercover filming continued, and more revelations were to come.
He suggested that he couldn't drive, and we filmed him driving. He said he had difficulty getting in and out of vehicles, but the film that we obtained of him clearly showed that he didn't have difficulties getting in and out of vehicles.
As the video footage carries on, he not only continues to drive long distances, but he starts to go shopping, and one day returns home with a huge weight of bottles of water. For a man who wasn't supposed to be able to use his arms, particularly to carry weights of any degree, that was quite surprising.
The video evidence was shot over a significant period of time and appeared to directly contradict the level of injury being claimed.
As non-medical experts, he didn't appear to be in any particular pain or discomfort. He wasn't grimacing, he didn't have to stop.
Eventually, the case went to court, and the claimant argued for a substantial payout. But the insurer's video evidence questioned his version of events.
He represented himself, didn't do very well. He eventually received £9,500, which was for the genuine injury that he had sustained, but the rest of his claim was disallowed by the judge.
That meant that he received only a tiny proportion of the huge amount that he originally demanded.
It's difficult to know why claimants do this sort of thing. It can really only be driven by greed. There's a feeling that there's a cash cow out there that they want to tap into. What they have to realise is that increasingly insurers are becoming aware of this sort of activity and are doing their very best to stop it.
An insurer sniffs out a snide claim for a supposedly lost Rolex.
If the claim was genuine, we would be able to pay her for the loss that had actually occurred.
And a van driver is apparently targeted by a suspected crash gang.
I think pretty clearly soon afterwards, I think he knew that there'd been a problem.
In the fight against the growing problem of insurance fraud, an elite police squad have come together to form IFED, the Insurance Fraud Enforcement Department.
Insurance fraud isn't a victimless crime. £50 of each premium you pay each year goes to the fraudsters. We have been set up to tackle that problem.
This dedicated team works tirelessly to bang up the crooks and con men getting rich off other people's money.
Please get back!
It is our intention to create a climate of fear for the fraudster. There's every chance that an IFED detective may come knocking on their door to arrest them for committing an insurance fraud.
Police, don't move, stay where you are!
By April 2012, after only 6 months of operating, they had already busted 80 fraudsters, adding up to £12 million of fraud under investigation.
These people are criminals. These are nasty people. They don't go out to work on a Monday morning like most people do. Their work is submitting insurance fraud claims.
The Insurance Fraud Enforcement Department is investigating an alleged large-scale car insurance fraud involving multiple suspects and several locations. DS Mark Forster is leading the investigation, and he's travelling with his team to make a raid on the first address.
We are going to execute search warrants and hopefully make 5 arrests in relation to the fraudulent setting up of motor trade policies. And they're doing it purely so that they can get access to the motor insurance database. To therefore sell on insurance, basically. So what they're doing is they're targeting young drivers in London, charging them £300, £400, £500 each for them to then have their vehicles put on the motor insurance database, which shows them as basically being insured, when in fact they're not.
The team arrive at the property. They're hoping to find 4 suspects, so the size of the operation means they've called in extensive backup.
Right.
Please open up!
See what he's got.
Lovely. Hello there, you are.
The door is opened by one of the residents and they're in.
Police! Where are they? Police officers! Please! Please!
Just stay there for me, please. Do you want to get some clothes on now and get up, please?
Just come
In
downstairs.
a moment, we've got you on. We'll put everyone downstairs in the lounge, explain what's going on.
Meanwhile, in a nearby neighbourhood, TI Alex Cooley is about to lead the raid on the second property.
Just moving into position now. with a couple of people on the back door, and I'm going to be going in the front door along with the support group with these guys in uniform.
Come down, mate. Come down, please. Police. Come down now, please. Hang on again. Now, get down to the door or it's going in, mate. Open up the door, it's going to be open.
It's taking too long.
I can do it. It's all right.
At the last minute, the man complies and opens the door.
Morning. To the alarm police. You've got Section 8 warrant of seizure premises.
They enter the house and go through the rooms.
Yes, hi, we're from the City of London Police. We've got a warrant from the magistrates to search for any documentation relating to insurance fraud. We're interested in motor insurance fraud, yeah. So that's why we're here, and we will aim to do things as quick as possible.
Back at the first property, Mark has arranged for the suspects to be gathered in the lounge.
I'm arresting you, okay, on suspicion of conspiracy to defraud, okay, and also on suspicion of money laundering, okay? I'll caution you, you do not have to say anything, but it may harm your defence if you do not mention when questioned something which you later rely on in court. Anything you do say may be given in evidence.
In the city? I know it is. Yeah, we'll interview you.
Nothing inside your waistband.
In all, 4 suspects are formally arrested, searched and handcuffed.
Just relax and...
They are then taken from the house for further questioning at a local police station. IFED suspects that they're involved in fraudulently adding uninsured cars to the motor insurer's database. But they'll only be able to back that up if they find evidence from a thorough search of the house.
You do get the impression that they don't cover their tracks as well as other fraudsters might do.
One of the most prevalent and dangerous forms of car insurance fraud is the induced collision. This is where gang members drive 2 cars in such a way as to cause an innocent driver to smash into the back of them, giving the impression that they're to blame for the accident and therefore liable to pay out on their insurance. It's known as crash for cash, and it works like this. First, the gang choose a victim. Then they move their 2 cars into position in front of the target. Gang car number 1 then slams on its brakes. Gang car 2 reacts by braking hard, resulting in a rear-end shunt from the victim. Gang car 1 then turns off at the next possible turning, pretending to be unaware of the crash. Fleet vehicles are especially at risk because fraudsters need to ensure victims have insurance. Peter Oakes is the head of fraud at a law firm that worked with a company targeted by one such gang. He dealt with one case which appeared at first glance to be a standard collision.
The car was going round a roundabout. It came to a sudden halt as a result of the actions of another vehicle, and the Ocado van is alleged to have gone into the back of the claimant vehicle.
The company was then contacted by the driver of the car, who submitted a substantial compensation claim.
3 claims for personal injury, there was vehicle damage, credit hire, storage charges, all of the usual things that go alongside the personal injury claims that are made. In addition to that, the claimant's solicitor's fees as well. In total, if the claim had gone through and been successful, it would have cost Ocado about £40,000.
But what the claimant didn't realise was that the company was using cutting-edge technology.
The vans are all fitted with cameras which record continuously throughout the journey on a half-an-hour loop. Every time there's a car crash, every time there's a vehicle incident, the driver reports it into his manager, and that winds its way through to our in-house insurance department, who will look at the camera footage from that incident.
The footage in this case was studied to see if it matched the claimant's version of events. Instead, it told a significantly different story.
What it actually shows is the Ocado vehicle going onto a roundabout, and you can see that it's preceded by 2 vehicles, a Vauxhall Severa and a Vauxhall Corsa. You can see the Severa in particular, he appears to indicate that he doesn't quite know where he's going. He goes to leave the roundabout and then turns right back onto the roundabout at the last minute, apparently leaving the Corsa with nowhere to go. The Corsa brakes, performs an emergency braking manoeuvre, and you can see the Ocado vehicle is only just able to stop in time.
Now, we believe that was an induced crash and the two other cars were acting in collusion with each other.
The key thing the footage shows is that there is no collision. Thanks to the driver's quick reactions, he managed to brake in time to avoid a smash. The evidence clearly disproves the claimant's story and also appears to show there was an attempt at an induced collision.
I don't know whether the driver in this case knew that he'd been the victim of crash for cash, but you can certainly hear the element of surprise in his voice.
That was close, man.
He pulls over after the accident and exchange details. I think pretty clearly soon afterwards, I think he knew that there'd been a problem.
With solid proof that there was no collision, the company took action.
We sent a letter to the claimant's solicitors and said that we weren't going to pay the claim. In our belief, it was fraudulent in its entirety, and as is typical, we didn't hear from those solicitors again.
Thanks to the state-of-the-art video evidence, the claimant didn't get away with a payout for a collision that never happened and was left empty-handed. Between 2010 and 2011, 750,000 house burglaries were reported in the UK, and insurers received domestic and personal theft claims totalling £415 million. Whilst for most people, a burglary is a traumatic event, others see it as a golden opportunity to make some quick cash. Paul Hubbard is the head of counter-fraud at an insurance company which was landed with one such spurious claim.
In this case, the customer submitted a claim to us for a burglary. There were a number of high-value items, including a £2,500 Rolex watch.
With such a high-value item listed on the claim form, the insurer needed to find out more.
Our next step in this case was to go and speak to her and find out more detail from her personally about what had happened and see if we could find some proof of ownership that if the claim was genuine, we would be able to pay her for the loss that had actually occurred.
But when the investigator asked to see proof of ownership of the watch, things started to unravel for the claimant.
One of the things he suggested was perhaps she would have a photograph of the watch. She said she did, but unfortunately it had been wiped from her BlackBerry. So she explained that while she no longer had a photograph of the watch, she knew her friend did.
When they received the photograph of the watch almost 2 months later, forensic image analysis led to an intriguing development in the case.
So they looked at the photograph, and what they actually found was that the photograph had been taken after the loss had happened. So she was lying to us.
Unbeknown to the claimant, hidden in the photograph was information that proved they were lying. The secret data told the insurer the exact time and date of when the photo was taken. And it was taken a full 17 days after the watch was said to have been lost.
Most of our customers are genuine customers, but on this occasion, I think this person got very greedy.
Greedy, and it seems unwilling to let the matter lie.
So despite the evidence that we presented, we were quite surprised to find that she then decided to refer this matter to the Financial Ombudsman. She wasn't happy to walk away and accept that she got caught committing a fraud.
But, unfortunately for the claimant, the Ombudsman wasn't falling for it either.
So all the details of this case were sent to the Financial Ombudsman, who upheld the decision that we had made to turn down her claim.
It would seem that for fraudsters, Rolex watches present an irresistible opportunity.
We see lots of claims for Rolex watches, and the vast majority of them are genuine, but where the story goes that actually there have been more Rolex watches stolen and claimed for through insurance companies than have actually ever been made.
The Insurance Fraud Enforcement Department is raiding 2 properties as part of an investigation into a suspected fraud involving the motor insurance database. In return for a fee, a gang is believed to be fraudulently adding cars to the database, which shows them as being insured when they're not. The aim of the raids is to arrest and question a group of suspects and find evidence relating to the alleged motor insurance fraud and suspected money laundering. The IFED team has already arrested the main suspects in the first house. Meanwhile, the raid on the second house is being led by TI Alex Cooley. The residents are brought down to the lounge and Alex identifies the suspect he believes is involved with the alleged insurance fraud.
Well, I'm arresting you for insurance fraud relating to abuse of motor trader policies. You don't have to say anything, but it may harm your defence if you fail to mention when questioned something which you later rely on in court. Anything you do say may be used in evidence. We'll be back soon.
The IFED team needs to find documentary evidence to support their investigation into insurance fraud and money laundering. As they start the search for both motor insurance and financial information, Alex gets the suspect to show him where he stores his cash.
Yeah, just 1,000 cash.
Okay, so how much is that there?
£1,000.
That's 1,000. Okay.
Alex decides that the suspect should be taken back to the police station for further questioning, and he's led away. Back at the first house, the team led by DS Mark Forster is searching for evidence to support the investigation.
We're looking for mobile phones, obviously computers, which I've not seen too many of, any sort of data storage devices, USB type sticks and stuff like that, and also obviously documentation relating to any of the 7 companies that the motor trade policies have been taken out in. Any insurance documentation at all that relates to any of those policies or any other policies which we think might have been incepted fraudulently.
Just found a certificate of motor insurance. Looks like it's been photocopied rather than printed off anywhere.
A potentially crucial discovery is found inside the suspect's car.
In the doorwell you've got, at this address, new vehicle quotation. Basic price 91, 118 all in with all the modifications, all the extras. It looks like he's paid 10 grand in, then maybe another £2,000 as a finance agreement. Very nice, on order.
The documentation shows that the suspect has on order a £118,000 top-of-the-range new car. The potential expenditure is relevant to the investigation because IFED has the power to look at suspect spending patterns and financial arrangements. Back inside, Mark is on the hunt for information about the suspect's bank accounts.
They've been arrested for money laundering, and we'd like to sort of, start seeing where the money's going, what money they've got in various different accounts, because if there is a large amount of money, our financial investigators can put a restraining order on that money. And it's down to them to prove, basically, that that money's been obtained by legitimate means.
As well as the bank details, Mark has also identified an insurance document that could be relevant.
Motor Trade Cover Note. Alliance is the insurance company, and that was incepted or operational from the 23rd of July this year. People who are into this type of fraud look upon it as a bit of a safe way of making quite a lot of money. And it was pretty much unheard of people being arrested for this sort of level of fraud against insurance companies until now, obviously. So you do get the impression that they don't cover their tracks as well as other fraudsters might do.
Back at the second property, the search for evidence continues. It's vital for the investigation that they find documentation to support the case. Suddenly, Alex makes what could be a significant discovery.
Letter to do with some collision, road traffic collision. Here we go. That's interesting, look. We've got a crib sheet. Ah, excellent. We've got a map and a crib sheet here. I've heard of these, I've never actually found one myself, but you will occasionally find a map and an explanation of what to say. So what I have here is a map showing 2 cars colliding with each other, and then an explanation. I was driving out on the main road, the third-party driver pulled out from give way and hit me on the passenger side, middle and rear.
Alex and his team have bagged everything up and are about to move out when one final key piece of evidence is identified.
This document here is one of a series which I found in a box on the suspect's wardrobe. which does concern a motor trade policy with a company that we were interested in. So, so far so good. We've basically found what we came here for.
Back at the first property, the gathering of evidence is also in full swing. Mark checks inside a safe he's found in one of the bedrooms.
Rings, chains.
This find could be significant, as buying gold can be a way of laundering money.
Really, I'm quite pleased. I think that we've got everything that we could have hoped to have found. We found 2 large amounts of cash in excess of £1,000, a large amount of gold.
The sizable amount of evidence that IFED has collected from the house needs further investigation, so they'll be packing it up and taking it back to their HQ. As the raids draw to a close, IFED has successfully tracked down and arrested all 5 suspects and collected a significant amount of evidence. The next stage is for IFED to put together a case using what's been found. In the short time the Insurance Fraud Enforcement Department has been in existence, they've already investigated over £8 million worth of suspected insurance fraud. They've got a huge battle on their hands, but they're ready to take the fight to the fraudsters.